My beloved child. The letter was already sealed when the psychic suddenly asked your soulmate to place it on the table and then refused to touch it. Beside the envelope sat a photograph, a phone with one unread message, and a small piece of paper carrying a number nobody had explained. The third party had expected a simple answer about whether you could offer your soulmate a stable future. Your soulmate expected something gentler. Yet the psychic noticed something neither of them had come there to discuss, and the moment she pointed toward the envelope, your soulmate's face changed. Because that letter had not been written for the psychic. It had been written for you. Only hours earlier, your soulmate had sat alone with the same envelope resting beside their hand, reading the final line again and again without finding the courage to send it. The beginning had been easy. They had written about missing you. They had admitted that certain ordinary moments still brought you unexpectedly into their thoughts, a familiar song playing too softly in another room, the glow of a phone late at night, the strange instinct to share good news with you before remembering how much remained unsaid. The final paragraph was different. They had crossed out one sentence twice. Then they had rewritten it more carefully. And underneath it, almost as if they were afraid of their own honesty, they had added a confession they had never spoken aloud. That was the line now hidden inside the sealed envelope. The third party knew a letter existed, though not what it contained. Their concern had begun several days earlier during a conversation that was not supposed to become serious. They had been talking with your soulmate about relationships, responsibility, and what it actually takes to build a life with another person when the excitement settles and ordinary reality begins. Your name entered the conversation. Not dramatically. Almost accidentally. The third party asked, "Do you really know what kind of future this person wants?" Your soulmate did not answer immediately. That pause mattered. Because the third party interpreted the silence as uncertainty, while your soulmate was remembering something else entirely, something you had once said about wanting peace more than appearances, security more than showing off, and enough stability to breathe without constantly proving anything to anyone. Still, there were things your soulmate did not understand about you.
You rarely explained every struggle. You did not announce every responsibility you carried. When money had been difficult, you had learned to become careful rather than loud about it. When somebody needed help, there were times you gave what you could without making the moment into a performance. When plans were unfinished, you often kept them private because explaining a dream too early could become more exhausting than working toward it. From the outside, quietness can be misunderstood. That was where the third party's doubt came from. Not hatred. Not some dramatic desire to destroy what existed between you. They were comparing what they could see with what they believed a secure future should look like, and too much about you remained invisible. So when they suggested visiting a psychic, they knew not for guaranteed predictions, but for the kind of symbolic reading that sometimes helped people talk honestly about questions they were avoiding. Your soulmate initially laughed. Then their eyes moved toward the unfinished letter. An hour later, they agreed. The psychic's room was smaller than expected.
No theatrical darkness.
No dramatic music. Just a narrow wooden table, a lamp throwing warm light across its surface, and rain making faint patterns against the window. The third party placed your photograph down first. Your soulmate placed their phone beside it. Then, after hesitating, they added the sealed letter. The psychic looked at all three objects and asked one question. Why is there a number written inside the phone case? Your soulmate froze. The third party leaned closer. Until that moment, they had not even known the paper existed. Your soulmate removed the case and pulled out a folded scrap no larger than 2 fingers. A number had been written there months earlier, along with a date and 3 tiny words underneath. Not a fortune. Not a secret bank balance. Not anything glamorous. It was a savings target connected to something your soulmate had once heard you say. The third party frowned. That's what this is about. Your soulmate looked almost embarrassed. Apparently, during one of your older conversations, you had spoken about what security meant to you. You had not described mansions or luxury. You had talked about having enough set aside that one unexpected problem would not destroy everything. Enough breathing room to help the people you loved without immediately becoming afraid for yourself. Enough stability that love would not constantly have to compete with survival. Your soulmate had remembered the number you casually mentioned. They had written it down. That alone softened the room. The third party had arrived wondering whether you were financially impressive enough. The paper revealed that your soulmate had been asking a completely different question. Could the two of you someday build something steady enough to feel safe? The psychic did not answer that question with a prediction. Instead, she picked up your photograph, studied it briefly, and asked, when this person struggles, do they usually tell people immediately? Your soulmate gave a small, almost knowing smile.
No.
Do they disappear? Sometimes they get quieter. Do they stop caring? Your soulmate's expression tightened.
No.
That's the strange part. The psychic placed the photograph down. Then perhaps quietness has been mistaken for absence. The sentence landed harder than anyone expected, because your soulmate remembered a period when they had assumed your distance meant your feelings were fading. They had watched you become less available, more focused, more careful with your time. They had interpreted your silence emotionally. Only later had they learned that you were carrying responsibilities you had never fully described. Bills that required planning. People who depended on you. Choices between what you wanted immediately and what needed to be handled first. Moments when you had smiled normally while privately recalculating what could wait another week. The third party's posture changed. Their arms, crossed when they entered, slowly relaxed. For the first time, the question was no longer, how much does this person have? It became, what have they been doing with what they had? That distinction changed everything. Stay with this moment, because one detail has not yet been explained. The psychic pointed toward the sealed envelope. Did you write about money in there? Your soulmate immediately shook their head.
No.
About a house?
No.
A career? Not exactly.
The psychic gave the envelope another look, then asked something so simple that your soulmate stopped moving. Did you write about being afraid you would become another responsibility for them? Silence. The third party turned toward your soulmate. Their fingers tightened against the edge of the chair. That was the first real crack in the conversation. Until then, it had seemed as though everyone had gathered to examine you, your stability, your intentions, your future. Now the attention shifted. Your soulmate had been carrying a fear of their own. They had watched how often you became the dependable one. The person who solved things. The person who made difficult situations look manageable so others would not worry. They had noticed that people sometimes came to you when they needed patience, advice, practical help, or simply someone who would not make their problem heavier. And somewhere inside your soulmate, admiration had become tangled with guilt. They did not want to be another person taking from you. That fear was hidden inside the letter. Not in the final confession yet. Earlier. In a line they had almost removed. The psychic asked whether they could open the envelope. Your soulmate pulled it closer. No. The answer came quickly enough to make the third party look surprised. For the first time that evening, your soulmate smiled. This one belongs to them. Meaning you. The letter remained sealed. Yet something about protecting it revealed more than opening it would have. Your soulmate had not written those pages as a dramatic gesture. They had written them because speaking directly to you had become difficult. Every time they imagined the conversation, too many emotions arrived at once: regret for what had been misunderstood, gratitude for things they noticed too late, uncertainty about whether there was still room to repair what distance had changed. Writing allowed them to slow everything down. One sentence at a time. That was why tomorrow mattered to them. Not because of any supernatural deadline. They had privately decided that they did not want to carry the letter unfinished into another day. Either they would send it, give it to you, or finally admit that fear was making decisions for them. The third party did not know this. The psychic did not know it either. Not until your soulmate quietly said, "I promised myself tomorrow would be different." The room softened again. Then came the detail that made everyone believe the mystery had finally been solved. The psychic returned to the small paper with the savings number. She asked where your soulmate had heard you mention it. They described the conversation. You had been speaking about a difficult period from your past, not with bitterness, but with the kind of calm people develop after surviving something they no longer want to repeat. You had explained that financial struggle had taught you an unexpected lesson. You did not want money simply to appear successful. You wanted choices. The choice to say no to something unhealthy. The choice to rest without panic. The choice to help someone without putting yourself into crisis. The choice to build slowly instead of constantly starting over. Your soulmate had remembered that. The third party looked at the number differently now. It was no longer evidence being used to measure you. It was evidence that your soulmate had been listening. For several minutes, that seemed like the answer. Perhaps your soulmate had written the love letter because they finally respected the seriousness behind your private plans. Perhaps the confession was simply that they had misjudged you. That would have been meaningful enough. It was also incomplete. Because the psychic noticed another mark on the paper. A second number. Much smaller. Almost erased. What is this? Your soulmate stared down. Their voice became quieter. That was the amount they once helped someone with. The third party blinked. You remembered that too? Your soulmate nodded. The story came back slowly. There had been a time when you were trying to save for something important to yourself. Progress was already slower than you wanted. Then somebody close to you ran into difficulty. You helped. Not recklessly. Not by pretending you had unlimited resources. You adjusted your own plan. Delayed something. Made the quieter sacrifice. And continued moving forward afterward without telling many people what it had cost you. Your soulmate had discovered the full story much later. That was when the psychic's earlier questions suddenly carried a different meaning. When this person struggles, do they tell people immediately? No. You had been quiet because you were adapting. You had sometimes been underestimated because nobody could see the calculations taking place behind your calmness. Even some of the delays you once felt ashamed of were not proof that you had failed to move forward. Some were evidence that you had chosen responsibility over appearance. That realization reached your soulmate visibly. Their eyes dropped toward the envelope. For a moment they looked as though they were remembering every occasion when they had judged your pace without knowing what you were carrying. The third party did not defend their earlier assumptions. Instead, they asked, so the stability was already there? The psychic answered carefully. Not as a number. As a pattern. That was the most important partial answer of the evening. No one in that room could guarantee your future. No symbolic reading could promise wealth, timing, or outcomes. Yet a pattern could be seen in the stories they already knew. You learned. You adjusted. You planned. You helped when possible. You became more selective after setbacks instead of allowing setbacks to define you. You wanted something sustainable, not simply impressive. The qualities your soulmate had been searching for in some distant future were already visible in the way you handled imperfect circumstances. That was when respect replaced uncertainty. Your soulmate looked at the third party, and there was no anger in their expression. Only recognition. I think I've been asking the wrong question too. The third party leaned back. Which question? Your soulmate's thumb traced the edge of the sealed letter. I kept wondering whether they were ready for the life I wanted. A pause. I never asked whether I was ready for the life they were trying to build. No one spoke for several seconds. Outside, the rain had almost stopped. The phone screen lit up once on the table, casting a pale reflection across the envelope, but your soulmate did not reach for it. Their attention remained on your photograph. The psychic slowly slid the small paper back toward them. Then she noticed handwriting visible through the thin edge of the envelope. Not enough to read the letter. Just one word pressed heavily into the page where your soulmate's pen had lingered. "Why did you write this word so hard?" she asked. Your soulmate looked down. The color left their expression for a second. The third party leaned forward but could not see it clearly. Your soulmate turned the envelope over. There, faintly embossed through the paper, was the shape of a word from the final paragraph. Home. The third party's eyes moved immediately to your soulmate. The psychic said nothing. Your soulmate swallowed, and for the first time that night, emotion reached their voice. That's the part one couldn't write without stopping. The envelope remained closed between their hands. Everything already revealed: the number, the delayed plan, the quiet help, the fear of becoming another burden suddenly seemed to be pointing somewhere much more personal. The psychic looked from the word pressed into the paper to the photograph beside it. Then she asked one final question. When you wrote home, were you describing a place you want with this person? Your soulmate's eyes filled, but they slowly shook their head. No. Their fingers tightened around the letter. I was describing what they became for me. The psychic's expression changed as if another piece had finally connected. She glanced once more at the sentence hidden inside the envelope, then back at your soulmate. And that is why the final confession frightened you, isn't it? Because admitting they feel like home means admitting what you were actually preparing to ask them. Your soulmate closed their eyes. The room went completely quiet. Then the psychic lowered her voice. There is one reason this became emotional for you that has nothing to do with money, stability, or whether they can build a future. Your soulmate opened their eyes again. The letter trembled almost imperceptibly between their fingers. The psychic touched the corner of the envelope and began. It is because the person you wrote this for once did something for you that they probably never realized you noticed.